Breaking tonight, the mask just came off. Washington isn't negotiating with Ottawa anymore. They're issuing ultimatums. Tensions are exploding across North America. Canada signed a strategic trade agreement with China, but instead of routine diplomatic acknowledgement, the White House just threatened economic warfare. President Donald Trump announced he will impose a 100% tariff on all Canadian goods if Canada makes a deal with China. Everyone believed independent Canadian foreign policy was still acceptable to Washington. Analysts assumed Trump's initial praise for the China agreement meant acceptance. Markets expected business as usual between traditional allies. They were all utterly incorrect. Washington, D.C., January 23, 2026. Sitting in the White House, Donald Trump posted a statement that stunned Ottawa. If Canada thinks it can become a drop-off port for China, he is sorely mistaken. We will impose 100% tariffs immediately. Translation: Washington just told the world that Canadian sovereignty is negotiable only when it serves American interests. And what happened next reveals exactly why this moment represents the fundamental collapse of the alliance framework America claims to defend and the rise of something Canada hasn't seen in generations: open economic coercion from its closest ally. Dear viewers, 8 days ago, Donald Trump said something very different. When reporters asked about Canada's agreement with China to exchange electric vehicle market access for reduced canola tariffs, Trump was enthusiastic. That's what Carney should be doing, Trump told the White House press pool on January 16th. It's a good thing for him to sign a trade deal. If you can get a deal with China, you should do that. Read that again. Trump explicitly endorsed the exact behavior he's now threatening to punish with 100% tariffs. What changed in 8 days? Not the trade agreement. That was already public when Trump praised it. Not the terms. Canada negotiated 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles, entering at 6.1% tariffs in exchange for China lowering canola tariffs. Those details were known. What changed was Carney's speech in Davos, January 20th, 2026, the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. Prime Minister Mark Carney stood before global leaders and said what everyone was thinking, but nobody dared articulate. American hegemony and great powers are using economic integration as weapons. The old order is not coming back. We should not mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. That speech electrified the room. Global leaders applauded. European officials praised Canadian courage. Asian diplomats quietly nodded in recognition. And in Washington, absolute fury. Within 48 hours, Trump fired back during his own Davos speech. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick piled on, dismissing Canadian concerns as whining. Give me a break, they have the second best deal in the world, and all I got to do is listen to this guy whine and complain. Then came the tariff threat. Then Trump withdrew Carney's invitation to join the Board of Peace initiative for Gaza. The pattern is unmistakable. Canada acts independently. Canada speaks honestly about changing global dynamics. America retaliates. A 100% tariff on all Canadian goods isn't economic policy. It's economic punishment designed to force compliance. Think about what Trump is threatening. Every Canadian export to the United States would face double its current price. Lumber, energy, automobiles, aerospace components, agricultural products, everything. Canada exported $437 billion to the United States in 2024. A 100% tariff would functionally eliminate most of that trade overnight. American consumers would pay double for Canadian products. Canadian industries would lose their largest market. This isn't about protecting American workers or addressing trade imbalances. Trump himself admitted the Canada-China agreement was a good thing 8 days ago. This is about sending a message. Independent Canadian foreign policy will be economically crushed. And here's what makes this particularly revealing. Trump didn't specify what constitutes making a deal with China. The threat is deliberately vague, designed to intimidate Canada away from any Chinese engagement whatsoever. Does negotiating canola tariffs count as making a deal? Canada already did that, and Trump initially praised it. Does buying Chinese products count? Canada imports billions from China annually. Does diplomatic engagement count? Canada maintains an embassy in Beijing and regular ministerial conversations. The ambiguity is the point. Trump wants Canada constantly uncertain about what will trigger American retaliation, ensuring Ottawa checks with Washington before every international decision. That's not an alliance between sovereign nations. That's subordination. Now watch what happened next. because this is where Canadian strategy becomes fascinating. Carney was scheduled to take reporters' questions after cabinet meetings in Quebec City on January 23rd. Standard procedure after ministerial retreats. The press gallery was assembled, cameras ready. Moments before Carney was expected to appear, the press conference was cancelled. An official cited the Prime Minister's schedule as the reason. Everyone in Ottawa knows that's diplomatic language. Carney isn't hiding. He's refusing to respond on Trump's timeline. Think it's it. About the calculation here, Trump posts an inflammatory threat on social media demanding immediate reaction. The traditional playbook would be rushing to microphones, offering reassurances, walking back positions, desperately trying to calm the situation. Carney did none of that. He simply continued his schedule and declined to engage. That silence communicates volumes. It says, Canadian foreign policy will not be determined by Trump's social media outbursts. It says Ottawa will respond thoughtfully on its own timeline, not reactively to Washington's provocations. It says Canada is not intimidated. This is exactly the strategic patience Carney has demonstrated throughout his tenure. When Trump threatens, Carney doesn't escalate. But he also doesn't capitulate. He keeps Canada's position firm without giving Trump the public fight Trump needs for his domestic audience. Dear viewers, this moment didn't emerge from nowhere. We've been watching this pattern build for months. Canada takes an independent step. Washington hits back. Canada explores European partnerships. Trump threatens tariffs. Ottawa negotiates with Beijing. More tariff threats. Carney speaks honestly about declining American hegemony. Trump pulls diplomatic invitations. Every time Ottawa pursues Canadian interests rather than American preferences, Trump threatens economic warfare. Canada explores deeper ties with European partners. Trump threatens tariffs. Canada negotiates with China on agriculture. Trump threatens tariffs. Canada speaks honestly about American hegemony declining. Trump threatens tariffs and withdraws diplomatic courtesies. The consistency is remarkable. And what it reveals is that Washington's problem isn't specific Canadian policies. Washington's problem is Canadian independence itself. Listen to American officials for 5 minutes. Democracy and sovereignty are sacred. International law must be respected. Diplomatic norms are sacrosanct. They give these speeches constantly, lecturing the world about rules-based order. They position themselves as leaders of the free world. But when Canada, America's closest ally and largest trading partner, exercises the sovereignty every independent nation possesses, Washington threatens economic destruction. The contradiction exposes everything. American rhetoric about alliances and partnerships only applies when allies agree with American positions. The moment allies pursue their own interests, America reveals the relationship was never between equals. It was always hierarchical. America leads, allies follow. America decides, allies comply. America threatens, allies submit. Carney's Davos speech named that reality, and Trump's tariff threat confirmed it. Here's what American officials fundamentally misunderstand about this confrontation. They think threatening Canada will force compliance. They assume economic pressure will bring Ottawa back in line. They're wrong. Every threat from Washington strengthens the case for exactly what Carney has been building. Canadian economic diversification away from American dependence. Think about the message Trump just sent to every Canadian business, every provincial government, every economic development agency across this country. He said, your largest export market can disappear overnight based on the American president's mood about Canadian foreign policy. That's not a stable foundation for long-term planning. That's existential vulnerability. And what does vulnerability demand? Diversification. Canadian businesses now have undeniable proof they need to develop markets beyond the United States. Provincial governments now understand they must support trade relationships with Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Federal agencies now recognize that economic security requires reducing American market concentration. Trump's threat doesn't weaken Canada's position. It validates the entire strategic direction Carney has been pursuing since taking office. And internationally, this moment broadcasts to every nation watching that Canada is willing to absorb American pressure rather than abandon independent foreign policy. That signal matters enormously. India sees Canada standing firm. Europe sees Canada refusing to capitulate. Asian partners see Canada maintaining relationships despite American threats. Latin American nations see Canada charting an autonomous path. The demonstration effect is powerful. If Canada can resist American economic coercion, other middle powers can too. If Ottawa can diversify away from Washington dependence, other capitals can follow the same playbook. Trump thinks he's isolating Canada. He's actually positioning Canada as a model for sovereign independence in an era when American reliability is collapsing. Dear viewers, nobody in Ottawa wanted this confrontation. Canadian officials would vastly prefer stable, predictable relationships with Washington. Trade continuity benefits both countries. Diplomatic cooperation serves shared interests, but Trump has made that impossible. He's forced a choice Canada never sought: submit to American dictates about Canadian foreign policy or accept economic warfare from our closest ally. Carney has chosen. Carney picked sovereignty. That meant rejecting American approval. Could he have taken the easier path? Absolutely. Accept Washington's terms, keep trade flowing smoothly, avoid short-term pain. That's what subordination looks like when it's dressed up as pragmatism. But here's what that choice actually means. For the first time in generations, Canada stopped checking with Washington before acting. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're behaving like the independent nation we've always claimed to be, and we're willing to absorb the economic hit that comes with it. Yes, the risks are real. A 100% tariff would inflict serious pain on Canadian industries. Industries would suffer. Workers would face uncertainty. Costs would rise. But the alternative: permanent subordination to American priorities, abandoning Canadian sovereignty, accepting that Ottawa's foreign policy exists only at Washington's pleasure. That alternative is unacceptable. And Carney knows it. Trump has drawn a line. Make a deal with China, face 100% tariffs. Carney has already crossed that line. The China agreement on electric vehicles and canola is signed and implemented. So what happens now? Does Trump actually impose the threatened tariffs? Does he back down when business groups scream about doubled costs? Does he clarify what making a deal actually means? Nobody knows. And that uncertainty is precisely what Trump wants. Keep Canada guessing. Keep Ottawa nervous. Keep Carney wondering if the next announcement will crater Canadian exports. But here's what Trump doesn't understand. Uncertainty cuts both ways. American businesses importing Canadian goods now face massive potential cost increases. American consumers relying on Canadian energy, lumber, and products now confront supply disruptions. American workers and industries dependent on Canadian inputs now worry about their jobs. Trump's threat doesn't just pressure Canada, it destabilizes American markets too. And the business community, the same groups that supported Trump's economic nationalism, won't tolerate that indefinitely. The political pressure will build, not on Carney, on Trump. Because while Canada can accelerate diversification toward other markets, American industries can't easily replace Canadian suppliers. While Ottawa can negotiate new partnerships with Europe and Asia, Washington can't simply recreate integrated North American supply chains. Trump is playing a game where Canada has more options than he realizes, and Carney, patient and strategic, knows it. This isn't really about tariffs or trade agreements or even Trump's ego. This is about the fundamental question of our era. Can middle powers maintain sovereignty in a world where great powers demand submission? America says no. American hegemony, as Carney noted in Davos, uses economic integration as a weapon. Alliances become mechanisms of control. Trade becomes leverage for compliance. Canada is saying yes. We can maintain sovereignty. We can pursue independent foreign policy. We can withstand pressure from great powers if we build resilience, diversify partnerships, and refuse to accept subordination as the price of trade. The outcome of this confrontation will resonate far beyond North America. Every middle power is watching. Every nation caught between great power competition is studying Canada's approach. If Carney succeeds, if Canada navigates this crisis while maintaining independence, the model becomes replicable. Other nations can follow the same path from dependence to resilience. If Trump succeeds, if economic threats force Canadian capitulation, every middle power learns the lesson. Sovereignty is impossible against determined great power coercion. The stakes, dear viewers, are enormous. Not just for Canada, for every nation refusing to accept the old hierarchical order. And Mark Carney, standing in Ottawa while Washington threatens, represents something America hasn't seen from Canada in generations: uncompromising defense of sovereignty regardless of American pressure. Trump wanted to intimidate Canada back into compliance. He's created exactly the opposite: a rallying moment for Canadian independence and a global example of middle power resistance. The old order, as Carney said, is not coming back. And these threats from Washington, They're proof he was absolutely right.